This is how we ride. This is how we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, I can't believe that I'm about to be the guy who defends NASCAR drivers. This conversation about Kyle Larson running a late model is what has spurred this conversation, this debate. And this is where the whole story goes into Asphalt and NASCAR drivers in a way. Dirt late models have totally different driving handling characteristics than any car Larson drives. This is somebody being so dirt proud, dirt smart. Keeping the car at proper posture is the key to producing optimal handling. The driver is the biggest factor in that equation. On a slow stop-and-go racetrack, Larson struggles in a late model, and he's not smooth enough on the pedals to keep the car at proper posture. This is insane, and I respond here. Insane for you to say when that's all you do in a Cup Asphalt car. He tries to say, are you a racing noob? Driving a Cup car is like driving a street stock. I said, bro, you're simply talking about weight distribution and throttle control. On asphalt, you have to have both of those abilities or you don't succeed. The stick and stab driving style you speak of is a sprint car thing. If that's all Larson has done, I'd agree. But as far as black slick type racetracks, he should exceed expectations on that type of surface. If he don't, it's simply a car setup. You're completely wrong on the street stock analogy. A street stock couldn't handle being dropped into turn 3 and 4 at Darlington at 170 miles per hour. That type of skill on asphalt is all in the throttle and weight distribution control. The one thing a NASCAR driver has is the ability to know a car's limit. On dirt, you can full throttle it and spin the tires / go backwards. On asphalt, if you do that, the car spins out and slams into the wall. You're sounding like a noob more than me because your perspective is judging a Cup car to a street stock. Maybe Bristol dirt, that makes sense, but a Cup car in its element is definitely not that. You've learned about chassis setup through iRacing, haven't you? A cheap shot because he has nothing technically to say to all the points that I just made, which are very valid. I said, no, I'm not talking about the chassis setup. I'm talking about driver mechanics, which is all Larson has. He isn't setting the car up. He is driving it. We can all see the cars, and I completely understand your description of what he is lacking. I simply don't see him lacking that skill or ability, and in a way, you are right in your diagnosis. I think it is the lack of forward bite in his setup on those tracks, not his ability, which is producing those subpar results. Most of the drivers in late models are the head wrench, so they know what to change on the car when they're driving it throughout the night. Larson just knows how to describe what the car is doing, not what to actually do. So he does lack the ability to communicate what the car needs in certain situations. But I don't think he lacks the driving knowledge to be able to perform in said situation. He can properly float a dirt late model. He is trained on how to keep a car underneath him. And I would place that skill he has to do that on his Cup racing career. He says, you have absolutely no clue what I'm saying. I hope you take the time to read and learn about chassis suspension and setup and geometry and dynamic weight distribution. Throws all these definitions out to try to out me because of my shock video. To have a car that steers and has traction requires the driver to be smooth on decel and rotating the car through the apex like a Cup car. Most late model drivers are way better in this slick than most sprint car drivers. Stop and go tracks are his only weakness as a driver. This is why winning Martinsville was so big for him, because he's showing improvement. Although, doesn't he always perform extremely well on road course tracks? Didn't he dominate Sonoma? I thought that road course racing was stop and go. My bad. And this sums it all up. You lead off criticizing his ability to float a car through the slick. He does not lack that ability, as that is the needed ability to perform in NASCAR, which is why some Cup drivers did/do well in driving dirt late models in their first try, like some did in the Prelude, which they prepared Eldora to be hard and slick for them there and in the truck events because it suits them best. A car can lack forward bite on dirt in the slick simply because the setup is off. There isn't much talent difference in the upper echelon of dirt late model racing. The difference is the setup of the cars. Did Jimmy Owens all of a sudden forget how to float the slick this year? Or is his car setup / team combo not aligning perfectly? You try to place blame on Kyle's driving ability as to why he is 8th to 12th in that top 10 to 30 is a lack of knowledge on a driver more than anything else. I'm simply saying that the driver mechanics needed to properly drive the car on a slick track he has. You disagree. I simply say that his NASCAR career is proof of otherwise. I am truly laughing out loud when you reference Martinsville and ignore his ability on the old Atlanta, Darlington, Phoenix, or better yet, California or Michigan. On those big tracks, he is performing the same driving mechanics you speak of needed for a dirt late model in the slick, but at 200 miles per hour. Maybe I need to give the NASCAR boys some credit in their ability, if there are truly people out there who think like you. So I do want to give the NASCAR drivers some credit in this, because it's not just a Kyle Larson judgment that this perspective is coming from. For some reason, people don't understand how this is how all NASCAR drivers and high-level asphalt drivers, all them drivers have that ability, which once again is why during the prelude and the truck races at Eldora, they had it very hard and slick. You noticed in the Cup race this year at Bristol, when it was everybody floating the middle, even in the Cup car, when it was everybody just floating the middle and everything is just kind of typical NASCAR style racing, even on a dirt surface, the typical NASCAR guys were able to keep up. Late model guys of the Cup racing world, the normal Cup driver, knew how to float the middle, but when it came to blasting the cushion, the sprint car guys shined. Just how the sprint car guy shines right now in dirt late model racing when it's blasting the cushion. When it comes to floating the middle, however, it's not necessarily the driver winning the race. It's the suspension. It's the setup of the car. Like I said, Jimmy Owens didn't just forget how to float slick tracks. It's not necessarily driver mechanics. And that is where dirt late models is getting closer to a Cup situation, because the setups of the car are dictating the finishing orders way more than the drivers behind the wheel. Most of the time, the guys winning on these float the middle tracks is the guy who's nailed the setup the most. And the only time a driver can outdo that is when there's a cushion on the top to go and blast. And he's got the balls, nerve, and ability to be able to do it. These setups and how those cars are handling in that black slick is making the bigger difference between 1st and 30th. More so than the driver's ability from 1st to 30th. And Kyle Larson, even as it is when it gets black and slick, he's 10th, he's 8th. And I think he's 10th or 8th instead of 1st or 2nd because he lacks the knowledge of what to do to the race car himself. Kudos to the dirt late models and their people out there who are driving and head wrenching their cars, because that's the old way to do it, and that's how you get an advantage. That's the working class mentality. I work on my stuff, I set it up, I do it all, and that's how you do have an advantage on a Kyle Larson outside of the driver's seat, is when you're able to mentally make the adjustments on your own car and do it yourself. That's the advantage that you have on a Kyle Larson, and you've worked for it. It's deserving. But this claim, and maybe it's out there a lot, that Larson can't float the black is just ridiculous. So, like the video, share the video, comment below with what you think, and this is an interesting topic. I can't believe I'm defending NASCAR. Maybe Kenny Wallace will now subscribe. Giving y'all some credit over there. Giving y'all some credit. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, until next time.
This is how we ride.